To speak to us this morning about man's impact on biodiversity, I welcome to the stage Peter Morris.
Thanks very much. Morning. Microphone working? Oh. I'm hoping that when the video goes on the internet that you get a thumbnail that tells you what the video is about. That's going to look like some sort of weird Ku Klux Klan rally that you're all out, or tweenies or something, depending on how your mind works. As we've been hearing, global warming is massive, it's huge, and we can't really skip round the thought that individually we can recycle, we can get the train rather than drive, we can become a vegetarian, but our effect on global warming is going to be about as effective as turning up at an earthquake with a dustpan and brush. It's going to be that useful. But small cleaning implements can be useful. This is a litter picker, cunningly disguised as the head of a Eurasian crane. Now, 400 years ago, these were prevalent right across Britain. More place names are named after cranes, Cranbrook, Cranley, etc., than any other animal in Britain, as those of you at the back can clearly read. But 400 years ago, something happened. Two things, in fact. The first thing is we drained all the wetlands. We've lost 90% of our wetlands, and that was for irrigation, using 17th century diesel-driven pumps. The other problem is that in those days there weren't meat counters, so see a bird, you imagine the bird on a plate. We ate the rest of them. Some of them have come back. In East Anglia, Yorkshire and Scotland, there's a few, but to the west of Britain, this is an iconic bird. It's 4 foot high, it's colourful, it has a deep booming call. If this had gone extinct in the last few years, there'd be an outrage. We're going to bring back this iconic bird, and this is what the little darlings look like. As you'll notice, that is litter picker version 8.0 with a spoon on the end, whereas I'm still working with the Vista version, but it's very good for pointing. This is what we look like doing it, complete silence. They mustn't hear your voices. We hide our human form so they don't imprint on us, and they grow very, very quickly, 1 centimetre a day. So even at night, they grow 1 centimetre. You have to make sure they're cuddled up against a pillow and that their leg isn't at a wonky angle because it might grow funny. They're beautiful little quizzical things. Like small people of any species, they have a wonderful habit of falling asleep in the middle of whatever they're doing. And for that, it's particularly dangerous around water bowls because they might drown. So put a few marbles in the water bowl, and it gets them used to digging about with their beak, and it also means that they won't drown if they flunk out halfway through. We even teach them how to fly. They follow you around. So it starts off, you go for a little jog, and you get a whole load of cranes will jog along behind you. You start flapping your arms, they start flapping their arms, they get a little bit of lift, and they get all excited. Next thing, you've got bouncing cranes going, hey! Oh, they are fabulous. The one thing we cannot teach them, though, is the thing that will be the measure of success of this operation, which is how to get jiggy. This crane suit does a lot of things. It's not going there. We have nearly 100 of these in the wild now, and the great news was that earlier this year, the first 2 wild crane chicks were hatched to the wild cranes. So this is going to be the moment that we see these crane chicks for the very, very first time. But do listen out, because in the hide, while this is being filmed, is some of the ladies who were the crane mums, and it's the first time they've seen effectively their grandkids. And to be fair, it's a while since I've heard young ladies make noises like this.
Oh my God! Oh, he just read it! Oh, God! I can't remember. Oh, is there a second. One on either side, one on either side. 2. Yeah. Oh, yeah!
So that's the cranes growing up, but as well as the cranes themselves, with global warming, etc., we've got a lot of species these days that are also yeah, and I'll try to speak up and hopefully you can hear. I'll put it back in a moment. We'll have my video in a second. So man's impact is creeping in us, as the London Wetlands Centre ably shows. So here's a little bit from Dave, one of our wetland managers, talking over this year about these effects.
Weather really has dominated the scene over the last couple of weeks. Heavy rainfall, a succession of westerly fronts, Big gales, and to cap it all, some massive flooding from the estuary, tidal flooding of parts of the reserve that hardly ever get flooded. And we'd like to show you just some of the action. As the tide came in, some of the behaviour surprised us. It was almost as if the birds were scared of the tide, rushing away from it, flying away on occasions, whereas some of them were able to take advantage of it and start feeding immediately.
Right, I'm going to just... Oh, can you hear me again? Excellent, brilliant. So, as David explains, we've got a lot of flooding and a lot of issues going on. And here's where he was standing, along this line here. This is the flood wall. Those birds that you saw were on top of that wall with that bit of water behind, and the River Severn coming up towards that wall. Now, we've heard about global warming and rising sea levels. What's going to happen is in 50 years' time, the Severn at low tide is going to be up against that wall. We're going to lose that strip of habitat down both sides of the river for tens and tens of miles down both sides. And that is home for 70,000 birds. Now that puts the Environment Agency in a bit of a pickle, because do they basically let all the birds die, or do they spend a lot of money pushing the flood walls back, and then lots of properties like us get lost instead? There is a third way. European legislation, the Birds and Habitats Directives, mean that you can get rid of it, because you need to, but as long as you create some compensatory habitat elsewhere. Let me take you 50 miles down the estuary. This is the Sturt Peninsula. That is the River Severn. It's a sea by now out to the right, and this is the River Parrett coming in towards it. This bit of land ends here in a peninsula. This would be underwater in 50 years' time. So it's got its own problems, but we're going to use this to fix both problems at once. And that is because wetlands are amazing places. Just like rainforests and just like ancient woodlands, they have a huge variety of animals and wildlife, but unlike ancient woodlands and forests that take centuries to rejuvenate, in just a couple of years, when diggers are working this fast, we can create wetlands and create entire new habitats that do a lot for both wildlife and for people. This is the result. This whole peninsula, the bottom half of it, the flood wall is moved back. It's now higher. It will be more effective in years to come. The east half of the peninsula, that's given over to the sea. At the highest tides, the sea will inundate all of that area. And as it does so, it will deposit silt. That will mean that the ground level will go up. And as it goes up, it will absorb the sea coming in towards these barriers. It will protect the flood wall so it will last longer. Not only that, wetlands absorb more carbon than forests do in the ground. It will also create grazing land when the sea is going out. That grazing land for beef, salt marsh cattle, you just move them off when the tide comes in. Also, it'll create nurseries for fish to support both wildlife and the food chain, but also the fisheries that exist in the Severn Channel. Not only does it also protect these properties from flooding directly, but it allows us to lose that salt marsh elsewhere in order to maintain defences that will protect 100,000 homes worth £5 billion. And that is modern conservation. It's not just about save the little furry birdie. It has to be about finding solutions that work for the wildlife, for the people, and for the environment. It's a win-win-win situation. That is the environment that we are now moving on in. Give you another example of a win-win-win. This is humbugs. I know it's humbugs because every Buick Swan has a unique bill pattern, and so we recognise them by face. They are our smallest British bird. They may migrate up and down from the Arctic. In the Arctic, lots of things going on with climate change, and amongst the problems it causes is that poor old humbugs is going to be put into more conflict with his cousin, the Hooper swan, also Arctic foxes that nick their eggs, and also big, scary polar bears. I will assure you this is not real. You will have spotted it's not real because, of course, it's a mute swan, not a Buick Swan. But what we can do in the short term, while we're looking for those mitigation measures that Alice talked about, we can go for adaptation measures. We can help out these birds with the issues that are affecting them now. For example, wind farms, or bird choppers, as they're also called. Right now, there are half a dozen Buick Swans migrating across Europe. They're going to come across the North Sea with transmitters on. We're going to work out the routes and the heights that they fly at so that we can help to site a wind farm offshore in the North Sea which will create green, clean energy without annoying people who are very proud of their views. So it's a win for people, a win for the environment, and a win for wildlife. Win, win, win again. There's an extra win here that these cormorants will show you. It's a lovely place to rest up as well. Another thing we can do is to maintain the habitat for them. Now, I'm going to show you a picture. This looks like it's going to be something like an Attenborough program. This is from Africa or Asia, surely. This is 30 miles up the road. This is Lancashire at Martin Mere. This used to be the biggest lake in the entire country. We're maintaining the last remnants of it for pig-footed geese, amongst others. 45,000 of them. Here you are, a conservationist, telling you about populations doing well. A little further up the M6 at Calaverock on the Scottish border. These are barnacle geese. The entire population of Svalbard geese was down to 5,000. We maintained an overwintering place. There's now 30,000 of them. This is what you call a sneeze photo, where in a hide someone goes, all the birds lift, and all the photographers go, yes, please, thank you very much. It's not just about birds. Also at Calaverock, as we're going around the site, we found these little guys. These are triops. They're prehistoric. They lay dormant for decades until exactly the right conditions arise for them to go through their life cycle. But the species that we're most interested in getting and attracting to our wetland reserves is on the right here. These little people, these bipeds. Because wetlands aren't just good for wildlife, they're also good for people. We are naturally attracted towards water. We're naturally attracted towards the outdoors. Studies have shown that if you have a view out your window of water, you can recuperate from illness faster. If there is a green space, people use it, they get more healthy. If kids are interacting in a natural space, it helps them to develop their interaction with each other. Water is good. It's the pleasure principle. We know it's good because we are 2/3 water. So what we do at WWT is we try not to fence off the wildlife and the water from the people. To be fair, these guys are fencing off a nature reserve for a good reason, but it's indicative anyway. We try to bring them together. So your Buick Swan, humbugs, anywhere in the wild, you will not get within a mile of him because they are very, very shy. But at our wetland centres, we don't only build an area that works for the wildlife, we build it very carefully so that you can get close and get just a few feet away and watch humbugs feeding through a window from a warm, heated seat with tea and cake. We do not believe that being into nature means you have to have an anorak and get cold and be without. This narrative is too much that an environment is going without. We're saying, go with. There are playgrounds. We have a toy railway festival at one of our wetland centres. We believe in effectively doing the opposite of what the car industry have done for years, use nature to sell their cars. Effectively, we're saying, let's just use everything to sell nature. Here's another example. This is from Norfolk at Welney. They've got to deal with a beer. Beer is fun. It is in my life. These are swans. This is our logo. Let's just get it together. Part of the overall narrative that you don't just go somewhere for nature and then it doesn't happen elsewhere. Let's bring it into people's lives because that's where it belongs. We even deal with the one individual who has contributed more to global warming and climate change than any other person on the planet. You all know who this person is. Just think of the forests that go to make that wallpaper. Just think of all those little plastic toys that you don't actually need. This man flies everywhere. Not technically in a plane, the carbon emissions, but there are still emissions anyway. What we're getting down to is the conservation aims for us is not only to save the wildlife and work for the environment, but it's about people as well and just giving people a good time. It's about valuing wetlands. You don't have to value the water provision, the flood protection, the pollution control. You can just value that it's a lovely place to be. And suddenly, I might be speaking a language that some of you can understand. We're after giving people a good time. That is what you do as an industry. You work towards that conservation aim. I'm not the conservationist, the only conservationist here, because I've got green trousers on. You guys are working towards that aim. And that's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity that you've got. It's not just about bringing these birds back, it's about getting reactions like this. Oh, bless him.
I think if no children came down here, they just get disappeared and what nice to be.
If you can't hear, they're saying really, really nice things about coming to a wetland. in very posh voices, they're straight out of an Enid Blyton book, they're amazing, about being at a wetland, that it's a lovely place to go, and more kids should get down there and experience what it is to get into nature. And as an industry, how many other industries have got the opportunity to get customer reactions like that, to be able to inspire people like that? So the final point really is that global warming isn't just a massive problem. For you guys and for us, it's a massive opportunity. So best of luck to lots of you in grabbing that opportunity. Thank you. Thanks, John.